Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to this new episode of BHH series, number 8. So today we're going to talk about digital therapeutics, or DTX. So I guess you've heard about it those past month, past year, like for the past 2 years, they've been quite like a hot topic. And so we will discuss today the situation of DTX. What are they? What has been happening lately? And what did it take for that to be like mainstream and be used widely in the healthcare system? And the question that we're going to answer with our panel today is that, is it going to be the new way to access healthcare in the coming month, coming years? So maybe a very brief introduction for those of you who are not too familiar with the term DTX. So I would say in a simple way, they're like DTX as like apps or software that can use or replace a drug. So they're normally like clinically validated and prescribed by a doctor. So I've got the pleasure to have a panel of experts today from really like different backgrounds. So the discussion should be very, very interesting. So we have Céline Ullman, who is the head of R&D digital at Almirall. David Martin Corral, who is the CEO and co-founder of Sensei. Lina Behrens, managing director of Flying Health, coming from Germany. And Guillaume Maspere, who is the associate at Asabis partner. So today we're going to use Menti again, like we did in previous editions. So if you want to get ready, like grab your phone. If we can have the slide of the Menti, please. Perfect. Yeah. So you just need to go to menti.com and you enter the code that you can see now on the screen, and we'll prompt you to answer some questions along the discussion today. So let's start with our panelists. We're going to start with Céline. Céline, can I ask you to introduce yourself, please?
Of course. Hi, everyone. So my name is Céline Ullman. I've joined Almirall in October of 2019 as the head of R&D Digital. I spent all my career in pharma. Before joining Almirall, I was with Novartis for 12 years in different roles, from research to development to medical affairs as well as commercial. And more recently, I was with the research site in Cambridge, Massachusetts, where one of my tasks was to manage the partnership with Therapeutics, which is the basis of my knowledge on digital therapeutics, and I hope it will be relevant for the topic today.
For sure. Thank you, Céline. David?
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. Well, I'm David Martin Corral. I'm the co-founder of Sensei, and Sensei has been founded since 2017. And we are building a data-driven virtual respiratory clinic. And what we are doing right now is we are setting the base in order to build our the deep phenotyping. And phenotyping is being collected by our app, which is a respiratory journal. And we collect data from physical environment, habits, social factors, medication, and perceived health. And that data, well treated, can be used for the next slide, please. We can use it for explaining the triggers. So we can identify and explain the triggers of respiratory symptoms, as I mentioned, from that kind of data. And then also be proactive, which means we can predict the respiratory symptoms or any symptomatological state. And also that data is something that can ease the conversation between patients and doctors. And just a brief introduction from my background. The next slide, please. Well, I'm a data scientist. I am finishing my PhD in computational epidemiology. As you can suppose, during the days I'm working as an entrepreneur, and during nights I'm a scientist. And my previous experiences, I have been working at IBM or senior data scientist Sanitas or another startup. And also I was the product manager based on health data products. and I have been a visiting researcher for MIT Media Lab. And also, if you can see our latest research on COVID and how we are simulating and predicting the curve, you can follow that link. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, David. So David will be representing like the startup today. Celine will be representing pharma. Then we have Guillaume, who will be representing the investors. So if you want to introduce yourself.
Thanks, Aline. Good afternoon, everybody. I'm Guillaume Manzarre. I'm an investment associate at Acces Partners. At Acces, we are a venture capital firm. We are based in Barcelona. We invest across the board in human healthcare. We started operations back in October 2018 with our first fund. We are still currently fundraising. Our target size would be 75 million euros. And we are active in biopharma and health tech, taking into account both medical devices and software solutions. We have a very, our focus would be mainly on therapies. For that, it's very important to all the projects in which we invest have a very solid clinical evidence based concept, and that's mostly what we do and who we are.
Okay, great, thank you. Lina, can you introduce yourself, please?
Sure, very happy to do so. Welcome, everyone. I'm dialing in from Berlin. I am one of the managing directors at Flying Health. Flying Health is one of the ecosystems for next generation healthcare. As you'll see on the first slide, we've actually been around since 2012 already, and have grown quite significantly since. So we are working with a variety of both startups, but also different corporates. And it might be a little bit small, but we also have two spin-offs, which are digital therapeutics, or digital drugs, as we used to call them when the term DTX hadn't quite been around, and have also set up a VC fund, which is now our sister company, Deal Capital, which is the fund of the private health insurances back in Germany. On the next slide, you can see that we're basically bringing together all the different major stakeholders within healthcare, ranging from pharma, medtech, health insurances, in and outpatient care. And you can see the type of companies that we're working with on the next slide. Quite a few of them are international companies. Some of them are more specific towards Germany. And I guess we might dive into some of the discussions and recent changes that we have seen in the German landscape recently. We are also working with different startups, as you can see on the next slide. And by bringing all those actors together, we are actually covering quite a large number of patients, but also a large number of hospital groups, which you can see summarized on the next slide. Basically, maybe a few sentences about myself. So I'm an economist by background. I've been with Flying Health for the past 2 years. Before that, I spent 13 years abroad in Switzerland, London, and in Bogota in Colombia, and have been working on a variety of issues, both within healthcare, but also for one of the largest company builders back in Latin America. So I'm very excited for our discussion today.
Thank you, Lina. Yeah, I think it's going to be a very exciting event today. So remember that you have the chat, and you can ask your question in the chat, and we will address them during the event, like towards the end as well. So as I was mentioning before, so digital health, DTX, digital therapeutics, actually like a subcategory of digital health. In digital health, you can find all like the health apps available on the market. And maybe one element that differentiates on a regular health app from a DTX is the clinical validation that is necessary in the case of a DTX. So David, can we start with you? Like, can you tell us a bit more from your experience? What does it take to clinically validate an app?
Okay, so it takes time. Yeah, sure. It takes time and effort, and have a well-planned strategy on how you are going to reach that validation. And from my side, I think we need to validate three things. First, the patient interest. the business interest and also the medical interest. And now what we are working right now, we just draw our plan on how we are going to validate. In our case, we are going to validate first that the data that we are collecting is useful for the medical practice and also for give some kind of prevention and prescription to the users. Also, we need to validate our models. We have different kind of models, the N of 1 that explain the factors. We have propensity models for predicting the symptomatological states. And finally, if we want to reach the point that we want to prescribe, we need to do medical trials. So it's something that we want to start from the smaller thing and climb the ladder until we reach the point that we can support the patient outside the consultation and do the things that the doctors want us to do in case that we can provide some support to the patients.
And what has been the major barrier to clinical validation so far for you?
Well, first, money, and the second one is to reach. Now, what we are doing, we are trying to reach those scientific associations. I mean, pneumology associations, allergology associations. We are starting to build a group of doctors that they believe on what we are doing, and we will help them to prove that what we are doing can help them to reach that point. So mainly is more in terms of regulatory, everything that you need to climb, CE mark, class 1, those kind of things, VDA, and also the part from the human side, how we help doctors. So those are our main barriers. And the second one is, okay, we are small, so we have been long time talking with people, and at the beginning they didn't see the value, or we weren't good enough on explaining how we can help them. Now with the current situation of the COVID, we think that now people say, okay, data is good. Okay, epidemiology models are good. So that's the thing that we will see. We will talk later, I think, about it.
Okay. And Lina, you, from your perspective from Germany, what happened with clinical validation? Is it the same as what David was sharing now?
Yeah, I think it's really interesting, David, what you were saying, because I actually just came off from a strategy meeting with one of the startups we're working with, and they were about to start with some of the clinical trials they have been planning, and basically due to Corona, all non-Corona, non-COVID research, at least in the with the partners that they were looking at, had been stopped. And I think, well, even though in Germany we are trying to go back to normal step by step, this might still continue for some time. So I'm wondering whether some of you have the same issues and whether you're also trying to move towards more digital trials, and if so, if there's any experience you can share.
Celine, maybe do you want to add to that?
No, I think a lot has been said already, but it's true that the regulatory environment is really strict, and to really show clinical evidence, you have to follow a very codified process that, as was mentioned, is lengthy and expensive as well. So for startups to be able to fully clinically validate their solution can be a challenge.
And so maybe Selena, that we're I'm going to stay with you now. So those past month, like a lot of pharma company got into DTX, like collaborative DTX. I think 2019 there were more than 20 partnerships, if I'm not wrong. So some partnership are like commercial partnership. So where pharma company will help the DTX startups to commercialize their product through their commercial force. or can be a R&D partnership. Those are maybe like the two main business model with pharma. So why? What are the benefits of DTX for pharma? Why are pharma so interested in DTX solutions?
Yeah, and I think I can give you actually two perspectives. I can tell you why DTX are interesting for pharma companies, but I can also tell you why pharma companies are interesting partners for DTX companies. I think from a pharma standpoint, we want to make sure that we provide holistic solution to our patients for, the disease areas we're in. Which means medication, but today it actually means more than medications only. And so to really be able to provide end-to-end solution to both the caregivers, the patients, but also the payers, we need to create this ecosystem beyond the treatment itself to be able to achieve this holistic patient treatment. And DTX was a mean to really complement the pharma portfolio in a meaningful way, in a way that we can achieve a little bit faster and a little bit cheaper than the normal drug developments. And therefore we see a lot of emphasis from the pharma side to embark on those collaborations. I think from a DTX standpoint, the reason why they're also interested to play with, the pharma companies is to have a partner for the clinical setup, partners that have experience in the clinical field, because it's not trivial to run, a randomized clinical trial. Fund-wise as well, being with a partner is very often, a relief for the budget. But also from a commercial standpoint, as you alluded, it requires a number of resources to actually successfully launch a product on the market. And when you have complementary assets in a portfolio, be it pharma assets and DTX assets, your story towards your customers becomes, in my opinion, way more interesting. And the pharma teams have those sales force and MSLs that can have this deep conversation with the physician, on the ground. So I see the value for both parties to actually partner.
In going just a bit further, what's the benefit for pharma of like bundling an app with a drug?
Yeah, again, in my perspective, it's multiple. There's obviously efficacy interest where you can you can imagine amplifying the efficacy of your drug with a DTX and vice versa, amplifying the efficacy of the DTX with your drug. The synergies of both needs to be 1 + 1 equal 3, and I think that's one of the interests that we're seeing there. I think from an access and value standpoint as well, there's a lot of interest in the sense that the DTX and the pharma product together can solve problems in different areas through the value chain, and therefore the overall value of the combination is probably higher than the pharma products alone or the DTX product alone for probably a reasonable pricing.
Okay, Guillaume, do you want to add to that?
Well, I totally agree. That's what we're seeing, at least from an investor point of view, and for us, obviously, the investment case and to be able to assess whether our investments in the digital therapeutic space we can have an exit window for us to understand the role of big pharma here is crucial. I totally agree with what Celine is saying. We are seeing this actually in some of our portfolio companies in which we are having partnerships with big pharma. The question here would be, what are the plans for pharma at the end? If I don't see if there is the big pharma envisions the possibility of having their own digital therapy solutions. If that's something that at some point pharma is going to start adding to their pipeline, digital therapies. This is one of the doubts that we have, and we need some more time to be able to answer this question. But yeah.
Okay. So now I would like to talk a bit about the patients. So if you look at those past 2 months, so a lot of patients, a lot of people of patients have been staying at home, lockdown. They were cut from like their medical team. They couldn't attend their appointment. They had to stop the like support therapy, and that could have caused some issues for some people. So could have digital therapeutics give an answer to that and help those people? David, do you want to take this?
Yeah, well, now I'm going to put my hat of scientist because it's something that we are working right now. Is there is a trade-off in terms of society policymakers? Is we have a trade-off that is economy, deaths right now due to the COVID, and the second one is the impact of confinement and all these street measures. What is going to be the impact? What kind of impact is going to have in the middle long term? So now we have chronic patients that are at home, and also we have patients that are not chronic, but they are going to become chronic, and they are going to have a reduction of the cognitive activity. They are going to start to have some kind of problems due to the sedentary life. So I think now is the moment, and DTX is the solution to give support, which is empathetic, is preventive, is proactive for those patients that are at home and they are in need right now. And we don't know right now the consequences that we are going to see in the coming months, and also in the coming years. So from my point of view, is policymakers need to start to move on and see more in the middle long term. So which is the new health system that we are going to have. It's my interest, but my vision is that we can help companies like us. We can help to improve the quality of life of those patients, and also the treatment and be monitored by the health system.
So it's interesting because I was reading an article yesterday about health apps and DTX, and they're saying that those past weeks, so at the beginning, people were looking for COVID, and now they're actually looking for like fitness, healthy. So it seems like the people are really like gearing towards like taking better care of themselves. So maybe the question is, do you think that actual situation will push people to change their habits?
Well, I think so. Well,
Lina, do you want to?
Sorry.
No, go, David, go.
Yeah. One of the things that we, during this confinement, one of the main tasks that we have done is in our team, we have an expert on designing health services. And the main focus that we have been doing right now is to try to understand the behavior of users and patients and consumers. For me, it doesn't care, our citizens, our people. So we are trying to understand which are the current problems, the current needs, and also in the future, what we are going to need, because we are going to see many changes in behavior. So we need to be prepared for those changes and take a step forward to try to give those solutions for these new coming behaviors.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, absolutely.
Nina, do you want to add something?
Add to this, sure. So in Germany, we have seen a reduction in GP visits by about 25 to 30%.
Lina, sorry to interrupt. Could you get closer to the mic? Because people they have difficulty hearing you.
Okay, sure. Is it better now?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
Okay, I'll just speak more loudly, given it might be the headphones. In Germany, we see a reduction in GP visits by 25 to 30%. And at the same time, we see a strong increase in the use of telemedicine, which is also due to the fact that the government loosened some of the restrictions on telemedicine. So prior to COVID, each doctor was only allowed to take about 20% of only 20% of patients through telemedical services. And I assume that after the crisis is over, some of those patients who would have gone to a doctor might be going back, but for others, we will actually see this behavioral change. And obviously, if people are already starting to use telemedical solutions, then the link to DTX is much closer, right? So we have talked to quite a few startups who have all seen an increase in usage. Kaya, whom you may know, the back pain app, they have, for instance, seen a 40% increase in their in-app activities. Hello Better, which is a startup focusing on mental health, has seen an increase in user numbers of about 60%, I think, in the first 3 weeks of COVID. So that's actually quite exciting that people are also using this time to try things out, given that they can't go back to their previous behavior.
Exactly, yeah. And David, before I give you the word, can we put the Menti for just a second? We're gonna ask a bit of get some input from the audience today. Can we put the first slide? Like the next slide? Yeah, so if you can all take your phone or go to the app, you go menti.com and you put the code. So the code is 104804. And so question for you, what are you using? What health app are you using? What are you using them for? Okay, so while you answer the question, David?
Yeah, well, at the end, the way how we have a new technology. Well, it's not quite a new. We have been around like 15 or 20 years. Our mobiles, but now mobiles are able to collect data. For me, a mobile is another wearable. We have it in our pocket. So the way to be closer to the patient is the health app, and the way to collect as much data as possible for trying to help them and give them that data back is the mobile app, and try to connect that mobile app in a holistic way where you can understand the environment, their behaviors, the social factors, the medicine that they are taking in, their perceived health, what symptoms they have. So we are seeing it right now, which is the way to try to monitor the population of a whole country. It's a mobile app. China is doing it. We are trying to doing it in trying to solve this current situation. And just one thing that I want to add, as Lina was saying, we have seen also an increase in the adherence of the patients in our app, and also one of our main competitors, which is Propeller app, they have also seen an increase in the adherence of using it in others. So I think it's the moment. It's the moment.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Can we see the results of the Menti?
I think
okay. And if we talk about medical medication adherence, so this has been a big issue. Celine, I guess you can agree from the pharma perspective, and the idea of a DTX is that it can actually potentially help patient to take the drugs, but would the patient be more adherent to an app that it will be normally? Would it be the incentives?
I think that's the belief. I don't know if we have sufficient, years of feedback to be sure. The analogy that we tend to take in the area is Candy Crush, right? It's an app, you have it on your phone, and the target population using Candy Crush uses it every day. So there is adherence to the app. So, there are ways to create adherence to digital apps, like gamification, if I go back to my example of Candy Crush. And we see DTX companies using the same approach, what psychologically brings you back to an app or to a content is being used, in the case of DTX as well. And the beauty of technology is that you can add a layer to that with push notification, with email or SMS or even WhatsApp as reminders. But I think the channels to ensure adherence to an app are multiple, and they're probably more powerful than reminding on your good face that you're going to take your pill.
Okay. Guillaume, do you have something to add to that? What you've seen from your portfolio company?
Yeah, well, not only from our portfolio, but also from all the several new investment propositions that we receive each week. We see, and that's maybe one of the challenges that I would think of when I think of the digital therapeutics field. Is there anything beyond this kind of CBT oriented or based solutions? I mean, it's a very obvious thing to consider that, for instance, let's say for indications of therapeutic areas that could be, for instance, mental health. These kind of solutions, that having an app in your mobile phone in which you can have a treatment that directly stimulates you in a way, is very easy to think of. But beyond that, what can a software provide you with that could have a therapeutic effect, right? So probably, as Celine was saying, the improvement of the adherence on current therapies that maybe are not as efficient because people is not taking their pills, if you wish. So this is a way that very directly links the digital world with the drug, right? So, and this is something that there are a lot of companies doing this around the world. We're seeing a lot, and some of them with very interesting propositions.
David, maybe do you have some insights, like what has happened to you?
Yeah. Well, the thing is, first, patient. We need to get rid of our interests. We are companies. I know we have interests, but patient. And we need to research very deeply which are their needs. And also, what a startup needs to understand is we need to be experts in behavioral psychology. And one of the things when I approach a client, a pharma or a health insurance company, the first thing that I say, okay, we are doing this. But the second thing that I say is we are experts in the psychology of our patients. So is what I was mentioning before is you need to be as closer as possible to the patient. And what patients are demanding is apps like Facebook, like Instagram, with the same features, with the same look like, with the same language. And something that has been happening for the last years is, now it's changing, of course, but is health apps were designed by engineers or by doctors. And they were looking at the technical side or at the medical side. So we need to put in front of and leading the product someone that understands the psychology, understands the needs, and that translates to the whole aspects of the company, the product, the communication, the sales, and with that, at the end, we can use many things that we have, that Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, Google are being using to try to get us sticky to their products. We can use them, but also those products, they have interventions that at some points they run out of efficiency. So that's why we need to go deeper in the terms, which is what is underneath of the conscious mind of those patients, and that's exactly what we are doing right now in Sensei.
Fantastic. So yeah, you're talking about brands now. So the next question on the Menti, if you can go on the Menti, is like, we're curious to know which app you are actually using. Like, if you give us some brands, some names, we're just curious about that. So let's talk a bit about investment now. So Guillaume, so you were saying like you've got several DTX company in your portfolio. As the current pandemic, the past 2 months, did it slow the investment and the number of like deal flow coming to you?
Well, surprisingly, this first quarter of this year, I think it has been the largest in terms of venture funding in the US. I think it's more than $5 billion invested. So, and also in the digital health field, we've seen several deals, several companies raising more than 100 million. So my answer would be no, and this actually is aligned with what we are seeing at Acces and what we are actually doing at Acces. We have several deals on the table that we are actually, we have the idea of closing them before this summer. So we're not seeing this a particular slowdown of the investment activity. At the end of the day, healthcare, if you wish, and in particular also digital health could be a sector of the economy that maybe it's not so directly related to what's happening in the whole economy as a whole. There are some obviously some effects that can alter your business plan, right? In terms of some relationship with some suppliers but besides that, R&D needs to be done, and science needs to be done, and could be done in any circumstances. So we are not seeing a particular slowdown of the investment activity.
So that's actually great news for all the entrepreneurs and startups out there working in DTX and looking for investment, right?
Fingers crossed.
Okay, I would like to talk a bit about adoption now. So a few weeks ago, I did an interview with a doctor from here, Dr. Morcillo, who is like, he uses a lot of new technologies. He's leading the digital hospital at Sanitas here in Barcelona. And when we talk about adoption in his interview, for him, you were saying that the actual physician would be like the more reluctant to prescribe and to adopt those technologies, because they were actually, from him, like the DTX solution need to be tested to make sure they were safe, like the clinical validation should be done, and also they should be CE marked and FDA approved. Lina, maybe can you share your expertise? How, because in Germany you had the Digital Care Act that was passed in November. So has been the reaction of the healthcare professional with DTX prescribing healthcare solutions, etc.?
Sure. So the Digital Care Act has come into effect in Germany. However, it's still being discussed or being decided what all the details will look like. And actually about 2 or 3 weeks ago, so in Germany it's called DiGA, so that's the German term for it. So there was the DiGA summit talking about fleshing out some of the details, how the application process to actually get onto the roster for reimbursement for all the patients from statutory health insurances, which are about over 80% of the 82 million people that we have in Germany. And it's quite hard to see right now what the reaction is, because the process hasn't yet started. So applications can go in possibly starting from June. It will take about 3 months for them to be reviewed. And then there will be the list, and there will be the opportunity to have digital health solutions being prescribed. And there is a lot of discussions ongoing at the moment. I think everybody is aware that reimbursement has been one of the main areas that is now being reduced, but that the engagement with both physicians as well as patients is still a topic to address. What the digital health providers in Germany are doing is really focusing on providing that evidence. They have the opportunity to either go in directly with the evidence that they previously had already acquired and go straight into pricing negotiations, or there is a 12-month period where they can actually generate this evidence and have patients already try out the solutions and then actually be able to generate the evidence for also for the pricing discussion. So actually, like the statement that you were just saying, that's something that is very closely taken into account. There's only companies allowed on the roster that are CE mark, that have the that are under that are class 1 or 2A. Well, previously under MDR, but with all the changes now under MDD still. And I think we'll see a lot of discussions there. But it's slightly early to have a look at it.
And so maybe based on that, so my question now is more for the Spanish people in the group or Spanish living people. What do you think is missing in Spain to get that Digital Care Act that they have in Germany? Are we far from that?
We are pushing, Aline. We are trying to the thing is that now is the moment, and as I was saying before, the governments need to try to think forward and in middle and long term. And if the regulatory ecosystem doesn't change right now in Spain, we are thinking of moving to Germany. I mean, for me, it's going to be easier. And I want to have a long life for my company. So in Spain right now is not the moment. And also in terms of adoption, we see already physicians that are recommending our app just because we are a symptom journal, and they see quite a useful value on that. And in terms of the health insurance company, we have a problem right now here in Spain. Is every health insurance company wants to do everything, and they can't. So leave us for the people that we can take care of the patient. And mainly is, I think doctors want health insurance company. I think they don't know what they are doing, or maybe they are now trying to change, and they need to make the reimbursement, and the policymakers need to change and make the regulation. Is the way to smooth the things. If not, we will need to go to another markets.
David, we
Celine,
can have a discussion
Guillaume, do you want to add
looking at Germany.
What, sorry, Lina? Okay, we will talk.
We can have a discussion if you're looking at Germany.
Okay.
So maybe something I wanted to talk a bit about regulation, and especially like FDA. So Celine, maybe you can comment a bit on that. So those past weeks, FDA installed like a fast track that will help solutions. So DTX solution like Akili or Pair Therapeutics, they managed to push some solution on the market faster through that fast track. And do you think that's something that would stay after the current crisis? Would it help actually to push DTX solution on the market?
So I have to remind you first that the FDA had taken a lot of measures to pre-qualify a certain number of vendors. They have looked at the IT platform of the solutions in advance. So they are already deeply, embedding digital into their mindsets. So this fast track approval for DTX in that period doesn't come out of nowhere, right? It comes from work that they've been doing for months and years, I want to say. And when it comes to the one that they've got fast track approval, I think that, based on proof of concept data that those two companies were able to provide and demonstrate in a clinical relevant matter, they recognize the unmet medical need at the moment and the psychological distress that patients were in. And so the Pair app that got fast track review and approval is for schizophrenia. And I think, those are a population that in circumstances like COVID are at high risk and that need careful care. And so, CBT provided through an app has been, used for many years. It has been used through computer for many years. So I think that, the common knowledge in the field around the usage of CBT in a digitalized way was already present enough to convince the regulators, on top of the clinical data, obviously, that those companies were able to generate. I don't know if it will stay. I hope it will, change the discussion to a leaner clinical process for DTX. I'm not saying like a less robust clinical strategy, but maybe a more focused DTX specific one.
Okay. Thank you, Celine. I will take some questions from the audience. So I've got one question from Guillaume. How many DTX startups have been funded by Acces very recently?
2. We have 4 portfolio companies, and 2 in our digital vertical, and 2 of them are digital therapeutics.
Can you tell us a bit more who they are and what they do, just briefly?
Yeah, sure. The first one is it was our first investment. It's in a company called Sius, which some of you might know. They are developing a virtual reality therapy for mental disorders, specifically to anxiety disorders and phobias. There is some clinical evidence behind this kind of solution, so it totally fits the DTX space. And the second one, it's a company from Germany, actually. Probably you, Lina, know about them. It's Care. They are doing it's a software, a mobile app for GI conditions and disorders. It combines some CBT treatments with the access also to some nutritionists and doctors through the very same app. So it provides an actual therapy to patients and to users. So those are our 2 companies. Yeah.
Great, thanks, Guillaume. So I've got another question from Aurélie, who is asking, how important are physiological markers in the validation process? Who wants to take this one?
Well, I think are
Celine,
very
maybe?
important.
Yeah, David, yep.
Go ahead, David. I can complement your answer if you want. Go ahead.
Yeah, sure. At the end, we need a ground truth, and the ground truth is the physiological marker. Well, you can take a sample of blood, or other way that you can do it is to prove already medical questionnaires or those already validated therapies, and try to validate them and implement them on your software. So yes, at the end, you need to see, in our case, for example, which will be our physiological marker. It could be the saturation of oxygen. So we want to see in a longitudinal study if since the day 0 until the day 100, we increase the percentage of oxygen within the percentage of oxygen in blood, for example. Or we want to see, if you don't want to go to the physiological marker, you can use some validated questionnaire, as I said. You implement it and you see the improvement on that score that is already validated. Is the way that we are trying to tackle that problem in our case.
Thank you, David.
Yeah,
Celine?
I completely agree with David. I think, that's why we are so strict on the clinical validation of DTX, because, the biomarkers that you would look at for a pharma product should be looked at for a DTX as well. So as David described, depending on your endpoint and the measures and the efficacy measures that you want to look at, you will have to test the biomarker front as well.
Okay, Thank you, Celine. I've got a question about reimbursement for Lina, because in Germany, I think you're quite advanced on that front, maybe more than I think you're kind of a reference country in Europe at least. Would you recommend companies who are working on DTX solution to go and speak to insurance companies? Or what's the best way to approach that? Companies, because reimbursement is important, how should they approach that?
Sure. I think it really depends on the country you're looking at. At least in Germany, prior to the Digital Care Act, companies had the opportunity to approach individual insurance companies in order to negotiate selective contracts, as they were called. And actually, Flying Health was actually founded in order to help a digital therapeutics to get into the market and negotiated the first of these selective contracts for a digital health app back in 2014. And ever since there have been quite a few selective contracts. Now, I think, well, you all know this, that in healthcare, we have this triangle of physicians, insurance companies, and patients, with obviously the patient being at the center of it. But really trying to understand what the drivers are for insurance companies and how they can be able to help and what kind of impact it will also have for them is really important. And what we see in Germany now is with Corona, actually, there will be much more cost pressure also on statutory health insurances. So having that discussion with them to see how your solution can also fit in with the care they offer to their patients, I think is really important. But it really depends on the country you're looking at.
Okay, thank you, Lina. I'm going to take one more question from the audience. So Nana is asking the panel, if you think that a standard double-blind and randomized design should be applied for all clinical trials with DTX. Maybe Celine, you want to take this one?
Yeah, I mean, why not? You know, you need to show that your DTX work. You need to show that your DTX works versus, a placebo or a sham. You need to show that, the safety of your app is there. You need to show that the efficacy of your endpoint is there. So to me, it's nothing different from a classic pharma product where you do randomized double-blind clinical trials. Yes.
Perfect, thanks. Another question from the audience. So how do you guys see the market of DTX in Spain now and in 5 years? Guillaume?
Well, maybe we can take a look on how is the market in 3 years in the US or Germany and kind of extrapolate, right? We are somehow behind. We're not the top country in this regard, so probably we need to wait a bit more to see results and to see an evolution here. But I mean, I think what we are doing in Spain in this regard is the right thing to do. There are a lot of new projects coming out every week. We're seeing this, most of them based on solid clinical evidence and with a very clinical mindset that they are trying to treat diseases. This is important. Maybe that wasn't like this a couple of years ago. So the whole mindset of the entrepreneurs in this regard has changed, and we perceive this as a positive thing. And then we also have some investors here that we are actually planning on funding these companies and help them succeed and to bring these products to the market. So I think, I'm not sure if in 5 years we're going to see something. Probably we need, I don't know exactly how many years, but I think we are in the right path.
I would expect it to be faster, actually.
Yeah.
I would say more like 3 years than 5 years. But I don't know, like David, you're more on the ground as an entrepreneur. What do you think?
Well, I hope so. I hope so. I think now is the moment to influence policymakers. And as I said before several times, is now, if we are going to see investments, public investments, it's going to be in public health. And if we are going to see changes, operational changes, it's going to be in the public health system. So I hope so. I hope so that it's going to change. If not, as I said, we will need to go to another market. Well, we have a global vision, but we also always started or thought that Spain would be the ground market to test our product. But if not, we will need to go.
Okay, thanks, David. So now my last question, my closing question to each of you. So thinking about the entrepreneurs who are listening to us today and who are interested, like David, in getting into the space and launching a DTX on the market, can you share some tips with them of what you learn, like mistakes you've seen, and you like them, like don't do that, like advice for them, and mistakes not to do? Celine, do you want to start from your experience also working with Pear in the US?
Absolutely. To me, my biggest advice is if you embark on the development of a DTX, make sure that it solves an unmet medical need and a health problem. Otherwise, you're not relevant.
Perfect. And maybe like a tip for them if they want to work with a pharma company like you, what should they do? Or how should they approach you?
So I think, what they should put in place is the infrastructure to complement the pharma portfolio. So, making sure that their system is validated and all the rest of it, but also that their solution provides synergies to the pharma portfolio at different level on the clinical standpoint, but also on the payer standpoint, on the physician standpoint. I mean, DTX is such an agile way to deliver, a therapy, but it's also a very agile way to communicate with physician through physician dashboards and things that a pharma product cannot do. Physician can only assess what that product does to the patients on a set date of their clinic visit, while the constant monitoring through the app and the constant data gathering provides a very different picture that the DTX company need to keep in mind and have the intention to plug into the pharma model.
Great, thank you, Celine. David, what would be your advice to your fellow entrepreneur?
It's the same that Celine has said. We have been 3 years prospecting the market, understanding the respiratory market, talking with health insurance companies, talking with pharma companies, talking with consumer care companies, talking with health providers. So at the end, if you are going to be a DTX company, you need to have a whole view of the market. The health market is quite complex. So if you don't have that knowledge before, you will need to spend a lot of months trying to understand the market. So that is my biggest advice. And as I said, have a mindset of clinical validation.
Okay, perfect. Thanks, David. Guillaume, like what advice for startups, DTX startups would be looking for funding?
Well, building on what's been said, maybe I can add that do not claim on having some clinical evidence if you don't, or you have a sloppy data, which is something that we have seen, unfortunately. So please be sure to be thorough in what you're claiming and that you're doing the right clinical assessment. And with that, I think this is going to have some success on the road.
And that's how they're gonna get money from you, right?
Oh, not so easily, not so easily.
Lina, the last word from you?
Sure, I absolutely agree with what the three panelists have said. I would add to get your business model straight. So if you solve a need, that's obviously important. If you can actually show that you're doing that through clinical validation and proper one, then think through like how can this actually all be put together into a sustainable business model. And don't try to come up and say you have 10 different people who might all pay a little bit for it and then defocus on trying to get everything right at the same time, but really spend some time and focus on your business model that suits your product.
Okay, Thank you very much, Lina, and thank you everybody for joining us today, for bringing all your very useful insights to that conversation. Thank you everybody for being here, for watching the event. So we'll see you next week. So next Wednesday, 5 p.m. and we're going to talk about digitalization of the insurance sector. So looking forward to see you next week. Have a nice week. Bye-bye.